ahead and get started. I'd like to thank everyone for spending time with us on a Sunday afternoon. My name is Jeremy Nelson. I'm the director of the XR Initiative at the University of Michigan. And today with me is Professor Michael Nebeling.
Hey, this is Michael. Michael Nebeling from the University of Michigan. I also wanted to be a director, so I put MI2 lab director. That's my research lab at Michigan.
You are a director. So today we're going to be talking about teaching and learning with XR at scale. And we thought to add a little bit of levity, we'd show you a picture of some of the scale that Michael and I got to experience before this pandemic took over. We both visited a facility in Glendale, California called The Void, which was a, would you consider that mixed reality, Michael?
Yeah, it was, they call it hyper reality. So it was an installation where we got to experience some interesting Disney content. And it's the second time I do this. Yeah, with heat fans and heat lamps and fans and everything. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so basically we have a laptop in that vest backpack there, and I think it's an Oculus Rift inside that helmet, and we got to walk through and be Avengers and try to defeat, who was it? Thanos?
Well, Earth, we had to save Earth.
Oh, we had to save Earth, yes. So we'll talk a little bit about that more in the context of education, and what does that mean, and how do we take some of that, what's been done in the entertainment space, and bring it to education. So the XR initiative launched last fall, and it's a campus-wide initiative to really bring XR technologies for teaching and learning across all of the 19 schools and colleges in the Ann Arbor campus for the residential curricula. So all the students on campus, when that happens and when folks return. The second goal was to integrate these technologies into the online curricula, which is rapidly evolving as we speak. But primarily before the pandemic, it was the Michigan courses produced for Coursera, edX, FutureLearn, and Michigan Online. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Michael's actually producing a MOOC that will go live this summer. We'll get into that a little bit more. And our third goal was to create innovative public-private partnerships. And so this means everything from working with Unity and Epic Games to having conversations with Disney and HP and Lenovo and Oculus and HTC. So really trying to kind of understand the whole landscape and see where there might be some interesting partnerships, primarily with content providers as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. One of the first things I did when got here is really try to understand what had already been going on. And there was a lot already going on over the last, I'd say what, 4 to 5 years, Michael, at least, in terms of faculty teaching with AR, VR, MR, with research. So I tried to meet with as many folks across campus. We're a large, disparate university. And so a lot of folks are kind of working in their domain and know about other things going on, but may not be working closely with folks. So I really tried to understand where the expertise was, where the equipment, and that's one of the places where I connected with Matthew and the RE group and some of the exciting work that they're doing. And so put together a list.
Where the talent is, yeah.
Yes, want to find out what we have to work with in terms of students and faculty and staff across the university, and there's a lot. So there's obviously a number of folks in the College of Engineering, Architecture, Medicine, some non-academic units that have some, I'll say, adjunct connection. So working with the museums, working with natural history, paleontology around photogrammetry and scanning, and so some of these other technologies that will enhance XR across the campus. So talked with over 100 different faculty and staff, and north of 30 potential projects just came out of those conversations. And so some of those key areas where XR education was already occurring with certain faculty was in our College of Literature, Science, and the Arts with folks like Matthew Solomon, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute with some Citizen Kane work. Our School of Nursing around simulations, School of Music, Theater, and Dance with immersive audio, Professor Kamchi. Our School of Art and Design Some pretty exciting work done with Roland Graff and Michael Nebeling, creating a product called iGym. Michigan Medicine with simulation training and other work in pediatrics. They were training with the Stanford VR Heart. Some pretty cool work there, as well as in the Children's Hospital. There's children's life specialists that have carts that go around and help um, young people that are in the hospital for a long period of time. They have Xboxes and Nintendo Switches, and they have Oculus Rifts, and so they were using VR to help with rehab and support folks that are in for extended stays. College of Engineering, like I mentioned, a number of folks in computer science and engineering and civil engineering. Geez, just a number, mechanical. School of Information, where Michael lives. Michael's work, we'll talk more about that. The College of Architecture and Urban Planning, there's a number of folks there exploring how to use virtual reality for architectural designs and virtual walkthroughs. We have a Digital Studies Institute where they've been exploring uses of VR for teaching and creating critical review. And we have the School of Dentistry. We're doing a lot of work with trying to understand three-dimensional models for orthodontics and some pain management. So a lot of interesting work, some great faculty working in those spaces to this point. So it wasn't like the initiative was created and then we'll say, all right, now we're going to start doing something. There was a lot already happening. And so how do we harness what is already occurring and create a bigger community and help facilitate shared resources and the talent. So some of those specific experiences that I found quite fascinating, like I started to mention, Matthew Solomon in film, TV, and media had worked with the Emerging Technologies group at the university to reimagine and recreate a scene from Citizen Kane. So it's one of the films that is studied in that one of the larger courses on campus. I think in this last semester, there were about 160 some students in the course. And so they worked with this emerging technology group to recreate the last scene of the film. And so Michigan has a large Orson Welles collection, and they were able to explore that collection and review photographs from the set. They had notes from the cinematographer about the type of camera lenses and angles that were used. And so they were able to recreate this last scene, brought an actor in and motion captured him to look like the movements of Orson Welles, where he's flipping tables and throwing stuff across the room. And they took there's a camera in the scene, and you can actually take that camera and move it around and reshoot the scene. So students this semester got to start and go reshoot the last scene of the film and then export it out into some video editing software, add audio commentary perhaps or music, and submit that as one of their assignments in the class. So pretty exciting use of the technology to reimagine what it maybe look like to reshoot that scene, where you may think shooting it from a different angle would be better, but until you can actually sit there and do it, you may not know. And in one of the, not, of course, we have limitations in the number of devices that we have on campus. We have a large visualization studio that has about 28 workstations where students could go do this. We knew not everyone could have access to VR or stay in VR, so created a desktop version of that for more accessibility. And so right in the middle of this assignment, students had to leave campus and didn't have access to facilities anymore. So that emerging technology group quickly worked to optimize that desktop version so students could use it on their home machines or laptops, because before that it required a pretty intense GPU and not everybody had that personally. Obviously, Professor Michael Nebeling in the School of Information, working with students to help create prototyping and design and help teach students how to design for this space and what are some of the best practices and techniques. And so he'll get a lot more into that here in a few moments. And then I thought very interestingly, Professor Sarah Blair, a faculty in our English department and a VP Vice Provost as well, she taught a course last fall called Novels in Virtual Worlds. And so her perspective is that virtual reality isn't necessarily new, these immersive technologies. Novels were immersive technologies hundreds of years ago. We just had to use our minds to reimagine that space. And so she taught a course where students would read novels and then go experience VR and AR, I'll say experiences or titles. And so then they would learn to compare and contrast and discern the different types of decisions that were made by the creators and authors. And so just a very interesting educational experience for the students. We interviewed some of those, and we're putting together a piece to share out later about what that experience was like. But there were just some interesting opportunities where the lab that they performed or took the class only had 6 workstations that could support VR. And so in the class, the students actually had to pair up and work on the projects together. And that ended up being advantageous in that the spotter students could help make sure the person in VR didn't hit the wall or hit the computer. And then they actually enhanced their educational understanding of the class, watching their partner in VR, helping support them. They had to have interesting dialogues about, you know, where can I touch you, or how can I touch you, if, or how do you want to be notified if you're about to get hurt or hit the wall. And so it opened this whole dialogue around just safety and consent and a discussion around that. It's a pretty interesting work, pretty exciting work. And so one of the first things we did, Professor Nebeling was doing a lot in this space and really helped, I think, bring the XR initiative to life. And so we partnered with him early on to officially make him our XR Innovator-in-Residence, to really help us shape the initiative, to provide some technical support for some of the projects we'll discuss in a little bit, student mentorship and support, and he'll talk a little bit more about his lab and the students that he's teaching to help us create more content and scale out, because I think that's a challenge that many folks face in this space. And I think we have some interesting, exciting opportunities to help scale that out. I'll turn it over to you now, Michael.
Okay, cool. I'll take you on a little tour. We're going to be very quick, but I just wanted to show you the lab. So behind these doors is where a lot of magic usually happens. Now, most of it happens remotely. Feel free to check out some of the research we are doing. In this presentation, I'm not talking too much about the research, but put the domain down there, so mi2lab.com. And so on the next slide, that Jeremy is in control. So this is what it looks like when we work with prototyping. So in some of my earlier work, I've looked a lot at how we can leverage physical prototyping to the extent that we can generate AR or VR interfaces, kind of like from paper, where the phone is used both as a camera, but then also as an AR or VR display. So on the next example, we also do a lot of 3D modeling in my lab. But none of us, no, that's not true. Actually, one of our latest members is actually an RE member as well. So Mitchell, he's pretty good at 3D modeling, but the other people like me, for example, who is an expert in AR VR, we play with Play-Doh and we express our ideas with physical prototyping. So I developed tools and techniques to capture these 3D models very quickly and without going into too much 3D reconstruction or photogrammetry that maybe some of our people in the audience are working on. We're using relatively lightweight techniques that work across all kinds of phones. This presentation is about scale, and so I was very careful with what kinds of techniques and tools do I develop in my research so that they can actually scale and I can use them in a classroom right now and not wait on Michigan to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually build XR spaces. So on the next one, I wanted to show you what it is like when we run experiments. What I find most fascinating is we're actually really good at creating the content for, like here you see 6 users, 5 users in a little study that we did, where we wanted to transition and transform this lab space that you see here into a crisis. And so we invited participants from class. This was actually embedded in a crisis simulation, crisis informatics course. And I want to show you, I'm going to play a video on the next one and let's see how well this works. But the next slide is going to show you roughly a concept of what was supposed to happen. So as people enter our lab with a HoloLens on, they then start to see it's raining in our lab. There will be like unfortunately virtual dead bodies on the floor. There's fire. People get injured in a simulation, so you simulate it here, and they have to, it's kind of like an escape room scenario, they have to leave the lab when it's safe. And so on the next one, I'll show you that we can obviously collect a lot of data. So we've been looking at analytics a lot, and then there are various startups and various people thinking about analytics as well. So there's lots of issues with what data can you collect, what data should you collect, how do you actually store that data, how do you process the data, how do you visualize that data. And we have like first work on this. I don't think we have solved it. We can collect a lot of data, but the sense making part is really the hard part still, and it's very application specific. Here's an example of a data dump in some sense that we've produced over a mixed reality session. And on the right, you can get a sense of the floor map, like how people were moving in the space. This can be animated and played back, and so it's very interesting. We thought this could be an initial set of tools to collect data and study experiences. So it's like in our upcoming paper, we have more detail on that you can find on my website. Next one is, I think I have one or two more examples. Well, I think the one message I wanted to like throughout my own work, first of all, I'm also always learning, which I find is most interesting. And choosing a topic like AR VR is very fascinating. I often get this argument from my students. Say, Michael, last week you said it's okay to use Unity, but now this week you're saying, well, it's still okay to use Unity, but maybe you found something, a better toolkit or something like that. And so in general, I think I'm driven by these two observations that we need better tools. We need to lower the barrier to entry. We need better tools to design and then also really incorporate AR VR into user experiences. Right now, there are like some afterthoughts or trying to replace completely existing experiences. There's not this perfect mix and blend yet, which we can actually achieve with mixed reality. So this is where my lab, I think, does a lot of research. And then I think we need to really see compelling examples of using AR VR to enhance user experiences. A lot of, and me myself included, a lot of the examples that I've created in the past, they're more like playing and toying around with these technologies. They're not actually really improving real user experiences yet. And I think this is why this teaming up with the XR initiative and education focus is very interesting to my lab. From my perspective, it's a test bed for some of the tools and technologies we're developing in my lab. I hope you agree with these two observations. Obviously, we have seen some presentations on tools. We have very sophisticated tools like Unity and Unreal, but still, we can always do better, I think, there, and we really need to make it more accessible to a larger audience. So I think I have one or two more, and then we'll hand back to you. This is the MOOC. Quickly, so it is a series of courses. It's not just one MOOC. It is like a specialization on Coursera. It's a set of 3 MOOCs essentially. And I think one of the important questions that I keep getting, I'm on various Facebook groups and Twitter. How do you actually get started in XR? Like, if this is the first time you hear about it, that's a way to get started, attending a conference. But then, like, I think the path from there and into XR is very interesting. Depends on your background and interest. And so we wanted to create this experience for online learners where they can learn about the concepts and technologies, where there is still a lot of confusion around specific terms like mixed reality, extended reality. Are they different? Are they the same? How do they relate to each other? What is it actually? And then also a lot more on doing. I'm very focused on, in my courses that I teach on campus, I'm very focused on teaching the process, which is interesting because process is evolving as we teach it, and methods, and then I want to be very careful with the tools that I choose because I want to make sure that they're still around tomorrow. A lot of us have been building tools, and I had this really interesting story with a startup all lined up for a course last fall, and then unfortunately they died over the summer. So these things happen, and so you want to build on tools that have kind of like a chance to survive. And you want to learn the right tools. And for most people, this is like, what should I learn? And so I'm trying to answer those questions in the MOOC. And we have critical discussions on shaping the future of XR, raising issues such as social acceptance, privacy, security, differences there and specific to AR/VR, and then accessibility and inclusive design, which I think are very important topics where, frankly, we could always do with better guidelines. And so we're gonna, hopefully, we have a little bit of an issue right now with moving forward with recording and all that because of the current situation, but the plan is still to launch it in the summer. And this would be one example. And I wasn't sure how well this would play for our audience, but as part of the MOOC, we've been exploring also how we can use immersive technologies to teach. And here, okay, frankly, I'm just using Tiltbrush, nothing that we created ourselves, but I find it interesting. A tool like Tiltbrush can be used obviously by very art designers, very good designers, but can also be used by teachers. And then it's really interesting how to make use of the space and how do you actually illustrate concepts. Now the content here could be a little bit more challenging and interesting and perhaps interactive, but um, it's still quite fun to watch actually. And this is how we created with a green screen setup and basically me in VR goggles. But okay, I think I'll hand it back to you, Jeremy.
Great. No, super exciting work. And one thing I forgot to mention, we're going to leave some time at the end of our session for Q&A. So as questions come up, please enter them in the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar, and we'll answer those. We may or may not open it up for mics at that point, but we'll see how that goes. But if you want to put your questions in there, that would be great. So really exciting work Michael's doing. Very happy to be partnering with him and helping shape the initiative. One of the things that Michael's intimately involved in and was happening before the initiative even started was creating an XR graduate certificate program. So this is for any graduate student at the University of Michigan. They can take an additional 12 credits focused on XR courses with a pretty broad representation. I think there's about 11, there's an extra dot there, but 12 different schools have been participating in this certificate. So if you're in a grad program in any one of those schools, information engineering, LSA, nursing, you can specialize and take this graduate certificate program. And so the intro course is Michael's course, correct? So that's kind of the prerequisite that they have to take first. So do you know how that works exactly yet? We're launching this fall.
We're launching this fall, and people will be able, with a smaller set of students, and people will be able to, well, take my required course, and so we have to make room for everybody, and then over the course of I think 2 semesters, go through additional credits. It might even be longer. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take to do this credit certificate, but you have a wide variety of courses to choose from different departments, taught by excellent people. It's actually, I wish I could do it. I would know so much more.
Yeah, so we have different, as you can see there, we have courses in art and design, School of Music, Theater and Dance, environment and sustainability, architecture. There's also a capstone project, I think, as well, that you'll create something as part of your getting that certificate as well. So for folks that are interested in more information, you can email xr.certificate@umich.edu, and there'll be more information coming out about that this summer. So as well as the faculty community and some of the staff that I've already mentioned, there's a broad community already at the university. And so I've met with a number of those folks and try to kind of help bring this together. I see part of our mission is to really create this broader community and help connect different people together and bring resources and support. And so as I mentioned before, there's the Emerging Technologies group at the Duderstadt Center that helped create a number of these experiences and did all the work on the Citizen Kane project. There's a group within our LSA program for emerging technologies and technology services that have been supporting the labs and other spaces to help bring the technical support. Many folks still haven't put a headset on, and it's not an intuitive, device or set of devices yet for folks to just kind of jump in and use as quickly as a smartphone. There's a team within our College of Engineering with some colleagues that we've been working with that are creating XR experiences and supporting other faculty, primarily in the College of Engineering. And so we're collaborating with them. There's folks in the museum collection. The University of Michigan has a large number of museums. They have a historical museum, a museum of art, archaeology, natural history. And so they've been discussing, we have all these collections, we have all these pieces, how can we get these more into folks' hands? And at a time like right now, it would be very interesting. I think you're seeing a lot of communication out about taking virtual tours of museums, and there's some challenges in that. Like many of them were built for the Oculus Go. If you don't have a Go, you can't get your hands on one, you can't experience them. Michigan Medicine. I talked a little bit about the Children's Hospital, but there's also a group in the adult rehab working with Oculus Rifts to help support rehab for older adult patients. And so they were like tie the controller to their feet to get them to move, and they were finding some of the engagement to just be way higher than any other technologies they've used to support rehab. So some pretty exciting work and research coming out of that group. There's a office of the provost level AVMR working group. So that includes folks like Sarah Blair and the Digital Studies Initiative like Lisa Nakamura and some other faculty.
Jana Milinchuk is also spearheading a lot of this effort
Yeah.
in College of Engineering.
Yep. And so lots of different groups that AVM working group tended to have more of a humanities perspective. So I think we're bringing lots of different perspectives to the space and lots of different expertise, how to use this technology to enhance education, which is very exciting. So there's a design lab in one of our libraries, the Shapiro Library, that's looking to enhance more opportunities for students to engage with the technology. So right now there are probably, I think there's 2 labs on campus where you can go experience this. And so we're looking at ways to how do we help scale that out? How do we make more opportunities available for students and faculty and staff to use the equipment and engage in the experiences? And then student groups like Wolverine Soft and ARI that are help developing experiences, training more students on how to build and create these experiences. So we're trying to really bring all these groups together to push everything forward, which is very exciting. So one of the things we did at the initiative to really capitalize on all of this work is we created a seed fund, and we put out a call for proposals to any faculty looking to advance teaching and learning, creating innovative uses of AR, VR, and then just increasing access. So we launched that last fall, received those in December, and we received 14 proposals from 7 of our schools. And so we had a process to go through and review them from a technical standpoint, a strategic standpoint, and then a provost level kind of review. And so currently 6 projects were funded. So pretty exciting projects that we received. And, some of, starting out, we received a project from our school, typo there, School of Nursing called Getting Under the Skin, virtual reality chemotherapy simulation. So to train nurses on providing a technique for chemotherapy treatment. We are going to be working with the faculty in the Department of Nuclear and Radiological Sciences in our College of Engineering to create an XR nuclear reactor. The University of Michigan had a research reactor up until 2003. It was decommissioned. We won't be firing that back up. And so a great opportunity to create a virtual nuclear reactor and create curriculum and run experiments in that space. We're partnering with the faculty in their School of Music and Neil Kapchi to create a toolkit or framework for creating immersive audio experiences within a lot of our other content. We're working with the faculty in the Department of Physics to create a virtual physics laboratory, kind of taking a unique spin on it. We know there are companies like Labster and other folks out there. We're trying to create more of a toolkit for faculty to and bring their expertise to the lab functionality to then build it from there. We're working with the faculty in the College of Architecture and Urban Planning, Jonathan Rule, to create an augmented tectonics to bring in other experiences for students to bring their work into VR and explore that and check and evaluate the different layers. And then we're working with the faculty in the Department of Orthodontics and Pediatric Dentistry to explore head and neck anatomy and pathology using XR. So what that means is they've purchased a technology that lets you take together a number of CT scans and assemble them all together to recreate a 3-dimensional view of the skull of a patient. And they can put on a VR headset and go in and explore where the teeth are, where the bone structure, where everything is in the head. And they're trying to evaluate, will that help students learn better than trying to follow traditional CT scans where you're looking at 3 different views in 2 dimensions, 3D on the screen. So some pretty exciting projects. We just had a couple kickoff meetings this last week, and we're continuing to move forward even in our remote capacity. A lot of the stuff we can get started on the discovery and the project planning and the initial development while we are remote. I'm just gonna click out of that. So now Michael and I want to spend a little bit of time just having a dialogue and talking through some of the challenges of scale, what that means, what some of the opportunities are, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. So,
and we do already have some Q&A that I've been
great.
watching out for. So I think we may be able to, and there's more coming in now as well. So we could just get started, and I'll try to include some of the answers. You probably didn't have a chance to read.
No, I have not.
So.
Okay, so why is that? Mine's not opening up, but I'll defer to you.
Okay, I'll ask you the tricky ones. I do the easy ones.
Yeah,
I just say thank you, and then
obviously, you know, creating and curating content is one of the biggest barriers that everyone that's been in this space and working in this space understands. And so I think what we're trying to do is create a framework or a process of, you know, bringing these technologies to the classroom, creating capacity internally. We've hired a couple XR developers. We're collaborating with these other XR developers that are already on campus. We want to work with students from RE and other students to help create more developers and create a structured process to bring more, you know, to generate more content and procure more content. We've been talking with other universities and trying to understand what sort of collaboration can happen broadly with companies and universities, because I think together we can bring more of this content together. It'll help faculty and students see what's possible and help make justifying large purchases of hardware and lab space feasible.
I mean, I'm trying to tie in one of the questions from Adib's side. So, and that's also something what I've observed. I'm gonna have you, Jeremy, chime in a little bit and answer that. So, at various places, like also including in Michigan, there was a lot of stuff already happening before you joined.
Yep.
And so, some of you know, not everybody is initially open to collaboration and seeing all the advantages of collaborating. And so Adib was like arguing that they're trying to, you know, overcome and connect some of the silos that are there.
Yep.
So can you speak a little more about the process of how you were able to unify or bring all these various schools that you meshed together is the question that we got. So from my perspective, you listened a lot and you met a lot of people, but what else what did you do?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've achieved it, right? I think it's always an ongoing. It's a relationship. It's developing trust. It's trying to understand. I think, yeah, that was the first step. Really meeting with folks, being curious, trying to understand what they were doing. You know, making connections. I know some folks wanted to connect with other businesses or other faculty or companies. So we'd start to see opportunities to connect. Hey, you know, folks at Microsoft are interested in this space. So we'll connect them with Ken Foster and other folks, Anson Ho, that you'll be hearing from later today. You know, I think we had a faculty lightning talk last December where we heard faculty talk about the work they're doing with other faculty so they could start to get a sense that they're not the only ones in this space. You know, it's hard. I would imagine when you're deep down in your research in your area, you just kind of get focused on that and don't have a lot of time for the broader.
I think that was a key event for a lot of it.
Yeah.
You walking into everybody's office and then following up with people and connecting behind the scenes. So I got to visit some people in aerospace engineering doing amazing stuff that I'm not sure I would have found. Sometimes it was through Kent from Microsoft who told me, hey, there are other people at Michigan. So thanks, Kent, for that. Sometimes it needs this bird's eye view a little bit. Yeah, so this, and I think you're doing a really good job there, connecting us, and yes, we can always continue to do that. Yeah. So on the content curation side, another question that maybe I can speak a little bit to, was actually asked by Matthew Solomon, a friend of ours, and he's been working a lot on the Citizen Kane project that you have mentioned. And the question was teaching with VR, so with VR and in VR kind of, seems like a live semi-synchronous setting. What spaces and or classrooms are suitably equipped? How might one schedule such a course? That's tough, right? I feel like actually, because I had this issue in my course where so I'm teaching AR, VR, how to design, how to create, how to develop content, and I would even say go more than, my focus is more on interactions. So content is a lot of 3D models and all that. We often just steal or buy, but with
Yep.
very small amounts of money. And then the key challenges in the course are actually creating the interactions and the flow and all these navigation kind of things.
Right.
Yeah, creating content. And so I always have this problem. Every class, even though we are actually quite well equipped, how do I actually show it in class? And so I've often tried to give live demos. I
Yep.
come with like 4 computers. Like I feel like, Arnold Schwarzenegger when I bring all my gear to the classroom, and that was not enough because sometimes my live demos fail. And so what I have actually done, in a sense, in the spirit of teaching at scale, I have converted my office hours into Twitch online office hours. So I was live streaming office hours from my office. And in my office, I could set up everything, including multiple cameras, microphones, and what I needed, all the VR and AR equipment. Question is still, how do you stream it? And how do you get that experience really well, communicated to the students? So I think this works well when you still have your students and colleagues experience it for themselves. I think that is a key. You cannot replace this. Once you have, I
Right.
think you can extrapolate, and then you can reach. But we still have all these issues with devices. You need space, physical space.
Right.
Yeah, you need the knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're fortunate in that, the group at the Duderstadt Center built this visualization studio. I think almost 2 years ago now. They started out with putting a few machines out there to see if there was a need and people were interested. High powered machines with GPUs and Rift headsets, and those quickly
People are
became,
always interested.
yeah. Well, so I think
Sustained interest is the question.
right, and so they created a lab space that allows any faculty student staff to come develop, explore, and now it's quickly becoming a space where that's where you can go teach a class, and it's getting overwhelmed quickly. So I think it's this tension between, okay, do we build out another lab space like that or equipment to check out? If we're going to make an investment like that, we need to make sure there's enough content or a pipeline of content that makes that sustainable.
Yeah.
But then also the hardware is changing very quickly, right? The Rift S came out last year, and now the Link for the Quest makes Quest almost a Link. I mean, it's not quite there, but it seems like it's getting there quickly, right? So if we were to
Yeah,
invest,
from a perspective, especially so I still think University of Michigan is well equipped, and I don't want to like brag with that. I actually want to scold us a little bit. I think we are well equipped on the VR side.
right?
We have almost nothing to offer on the AR side. Now you can always argue that, and that's not true because we have lots of HoloLens on campus, HoloLens
Mhm.
1, but Kent is eagerly working on getting us HoloLens 2, as far as I know, right, Kent? And so Microsoft has been a great partner in all this,
Right.
but so one thing I was thinking about, what if you put webcams into like connected to each computer? Now with webcams, you can do a lot of AR. A lot of our students who use their laptops to do AR and
Sure.
Euphoria and Marketplace and all that. But none of this is really this wearable. I think ultimately a lot of students want to design content that you can ultimately experience through like a wearable
Sure. Sure. Right.
AR headset. And so it's hard. These devices are very expensive.
Yep.
I always make this joke when I hand it around in class. Fun, it's $3,500. Don't break it. Uh, you
Right.
know, it's
Right.
not like, oh, who cares? So,
Well, what are your thoughts on mobile phones? I mean, most mobile phones.
technologically, mobile phones are the reason why AR Kit and AR Core Microsoft is also playing on the space, but let's say Google and
Mm.
Apple are heavily investing, is
Right.
because we can, through AR on the smartphones, we have users, right? One of the issues I have in my own research is like, where do I find users of AR or VR, experienced users especially?
Right.
And you can't study your own stuff with your own students or friends, and it's not good science. Let's just
Yep.
speak like that. So the smartphones, a lot of people have the latest generation of smartphones. They have very good processors, and even the devices that people put on your head these days, they are essentially just the same technology that mobile phones are.
Sure.
And there was a strategic decision that you can actually improve a lot of the algorithms by having people use their smartphones. You can also, as you probably have heard in the news, Niantic just bought a startup that was pretty active and actually kind of connected to us in some sense, 60 AI, and we're doing real-time 3D real-time reconstruction of the environment around you as you use your smartphones, and so we can build this AR cloud and mapping out the world together kind of thing, because
Sure,
everybody
sure,
has these devices. So it's both smart and actually good technologically. I think it advances a lot of the algorithms. It
sure.
fosters innovation. It's also scary from a privacy angle, especially with all the content that we share and acquire through these
Hmm.
devices.
Hmm. What are your thoughts on the new LiDAR scanner in the iPads? Does that?
Initially exciting.
Yeah,
I haven't thought through all the bad things I could do with it yet, or others.
sure.
So yeah.
There seems to be investment is being made in that space to further advance. What we know about the
So
wearables is the battery life and the heat, and
so my strategy when it comes to procuring and deploying hardware, and I've given you the tip as well, and you're doing it as well, is get your hands on it
yeah,
in small in small
yeah,
amounts initially before you
yeah,
make any larger investment into any of these. I think the latest iPad would be worth buying that and seeing. I have so many generations of iPads. I feel really sad when I look at all the poor little guys, their smartwatches, and all the equipment that I bought over the last few years, and nobody plays with them anymore. They're not cool anymore. But it's part of our, and the headsets that we're trying out is part of that rapid evolution of AR VR. So
right,
it
yeah,
helps to have friends, right? Like a lot of our friends who have given us devices and equipment. We could always have more friends. Everybody needs more friends.
yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of related to that. So, let's say we're solving the content creation where we've got hardware, distributing this content. There are, you know, there's Steam, there's the Oculus Store, there's Viveport, we could do something ourselves, right? So there's some challenge of like getting the content out there. There's
Yeah.
other places that people just have
We
files,
are
hard drive.
repeating
Yes,
history, right? We're just creating more information silos because everybody wants to have their own app store and all that.
right,
The solution is the web.
right,
I'm a big proponent of web and WebXR, and I think going that route would solve a lot of the
sure,
issues. In a lot of my research, we can afford to build prototypes using WebXR technologies that are, you can still feel a difference between a native or a Unity app or things like that. I'm not saying it's better. I'm
yep,
just saying it has some advantages as well. It would also support adoption more, right? Like
sure,
actually in the COVID-19 situation right now, how do we do research? How do you reach users? How do we run user studies remotely?
right.
Can we
It's
ship
only people
equipment?
that have headsets, right, or that
Yeah,
have the device,
yeah,
right? Yeah, then
yeah.
you're already limiting your pool of potential users.
Mm. I wanted to mix one in from we talked a little bit about the VR classroom. So my answer to that one, Robert, was that it's challenging. And also Matthew, it's challenging. We are nicely equipped, but we kind of like also want to play it safe, create backups, have backup videos. Like I think that's the way to actually go about teaching with these technologies. I feel very uncomfortable, even though I'm actually quite experienced with these technologies. When something breaks, Michael goes into this apologetic mode, and I'm sorry, guys. And this just happened. This worked 5 minutes ago, so it happens to the best of us. So I can feel like trying, and then with the right audience, you also have that appreciation, even if something goes wrong. But I think it's good. VR into curriculum. I don't know. This one is probably good. We have found
Mhm.
that our faculty are quite interested in integrating VR into their curriculum,
Yep.
but the tools are not quite there for their particular higher education domains. That's also an observation you have. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I think some areas tend to have components. I'm seeing in some of the engineering simulation software, the Siemens software has view your 3D model or view your simulation in VR. So some of those tools have already built that in. I would say that was one of the reasons we put out the seed fund to find and help some of these faculties integrate this into the curriculum. I think it also leads into that last bullet we have on this slide around, we still don't know a lot about how effective these learning experiences are. What are the learning goals and objectives that are going to be most beneficial? How do we assess? How do we evaluate? What are, there's some research. It's not broad. It's not around
It's
what
evolving, yeah.
it's evolving, right? And so
Mm.
how do we build that kind of process into these experiences that we're that we are creating. I think,
Yeah.
some of the skills based and the training, like companies like Striver, that are doing a lot of the soft skills or specific training with 360 video and 3DOF headsets. I think there is more content in that space, and those headsets tend to be a little bit cheaper. They don't
Mhm.
allow a lot of that psychomotor interaction where you're actually engaging and grabbing,
Yeah.
gaze based and controller based. But there's
Uh,
still
what,
value in that. I mean, specifically for that type of skill based training or soft skills.
One of the things that somebody asked about whether learning experience or instructional designers are involved in our efforts.
Yeah.
And another question was to what extent RE's, what's the RE's role within Michigan initiative? So
Yeah.
I'd say on the learning experience design, like the XR initiative is housed within academic innovation.
Yep.
And we have, for example, on my MOOC, I'm working with very talented people who are learning experience designers, who are educators, who are teaching VR and learning from teaching VR,
Yep.
and who help me improve and actually completely revise exercises and assignments, both for like an online setting, but also just like sometimes I forget how hard some things are in XR, so like I need to be reminded of some of these things, and so that's, I think, I gave this question Jeremy once in our early conversations, like if you had to build a team of 4 to 5 people, who would you pick? Like how many engineers, how many designers, how many learning experience designers, how many instructional designers, how many interaction designers? You should play this game because I think it tells you a lot about the focus of the initiative, whatever it is that you're working on. In our case, I think learning experience designers are important,
Critical.
key,
Yeah.
critical. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Ari is critical. It's I still remember when Matthew I met a little later, but Michael Zhang, he walked into my office and said, "Michael, nice to meet you. I'm Michael. I'm going to create this augmented reality initiative with students." And I was like, "Cool, you sound like an ambitious young gentleman. We need this." And here we are as the second XR Midwest. There's a, I started hiring some of the students. I've worked with some of the students. I think very highly of mostly undergraduate driven student-led initiative, and I think we could do a better job even supporting them
Yep.
more. So that goes to all the faculty out there at Michigan. Do your job. They have great students on campus, and also obviously at the higher levels in the leadership. I think through you,
Yep. Yep.
we can actually make both financially and then also media wise, attention wise, we can support them and grow and scale.
Yeah. I mean, I see it as one of the key vehicles for us to create more content and help train more people in this space and give students interested in this more like opportunities to create content for themselves or their fellow students in their learning experience. Well, I know we're getting a little tight, so maybe let's go to the next slide about some of the opportunities in this space. I think really creating personalized learning, I think, is at the heart of the goal of all of the online learning and a lot of the work that Center for Academic Innovation does. And then I think in this space as well, we have opportunities to create very unique learning experiences for students. Like I would say in that Citizen Kane project, each student can reimagine and create this film scene, very personal to them, what they want to see, what they take a tool set and create that in that space. The medicine space and nursing space, I think, is just ripe for, especially right now. There's already some content being created to train for COVID, training for nurses and physicians. There's a number of folks we've been talking to that are building platforms and multi-user and managing simulation and providing that feedback. I think it was about 2 months ago, I, along with faculty Michelle Abersold, met with somebody in DC and 2 people in Greece, and we did a virtual knee replacement surgery in about 45 minutes. And it gave me real-time feedback right there about how many mistakes I made and where to improve. And I was on the easy version, so it lit up green to grab the scalpel and where to lock it in. So I think that space for sure has immediate opportunities. We've been talking even this last week about different support for our School of Nursing around online learning or remote learning for when students come back or meet them where they are. there's this whole concept of virtual field trips and exploring ancient historical locations. I think there are already a number of 360 channels on YouTube to go explore. I've been having my kids go visit places while we've been locked in the house for the last 3 weeks, to just show them other places around the world. It's not quite the same, obviously, but I think it allows us to take folks in an immersive way to places maybe they won't get to go, or maybe they wouldn't get to go back to if they were there before. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on any of these opportunities, Michael?
I like the examples that you chose. I also
Yeah.
think in current times where we are limited, it helps to dream, and
Yeah.
it is nice to pick future vacation locations.
Yeah. Right.
That way, I was able to show my mom where I work, put her in a cardboard initially, and then like every year I would try to visit her twice in Germany, and I'll bring the latest kind of tech that I feel is safe to take with me. And
Right.
one time I took a Quest with me, and she was like, "Wow!" And it's cool. I think it's a good way to. A lot of it is unbelievable initially, with a few tricks of optic distortions, what you can accomplish, the feeling of presence in some sense.
Right. Right.
It's interesting. So, did you go over all the points you wanted to make here? Because I have one big one waiting for you.
I think we didn't talk too much about it, but this last one around, we had a couple speakers in earlier this semester before we had to go remote, and one of them was a faculty from Columbia University, Courtney Cogburn, and she created an experience called 1,000 Cut Journey with Stanford and Jeremy Bailenson lab, and it just was really fascinating. We can send out a link to this. There's a link on our XR website from that talk, just about the way that she was able to use this medium to begin to address anti-racism, anti-Black racism, and use this in a social disparity context. It wasn't necessarily to walk in another person's shoe, but to experience in a very immersive way what some people experience. And I think there's some really interesting opportunities to explore with these mediums to with proper kind of ethics and review about
Yeah.
proper appropriation around how to create an experience that might not be possible other ways, or
Yeah.
create those feelings that very powerful.
The feeling of empathy, and then
Yeah.
also actually you need to be very careful. Like I have a lot of students exploring interesting subjects in my courses, and sometimes I'm just like really scared of what it might be like to experience that, and the triggers,
Sure.
and all
Yep.
that. So while the safe choice is not to pursue it, I think the better choice is actually to pursue it and pay attention. And so we've been
Yep.
working on current master thesis I'm really excited about is on museums of memory, and in some sense using AR to remember and not re-victimize, but remember and understand all these kinds of issues in certain cultures. And
Yeah.
obviously Germany has a very rich past, you might say, in that sense. And so I've been trying to stay away from Germany so far in my own research, but I think
Sure.
we could do there more. So if you go to the last one that we have, I can
Yeah.
ask you the killer question, and then
Sure.
we can like wrap up. So I think the next steps tie really nicely in with the question that we got from Moody,
Sure.
Matt, who was a speaker this morning. He first of all congratulated us on the XR initiative. So there you are, director. And what does success look like for the UM XR initiative in 1, 3, and 5 years down the road?
Sure.
A lot of it is probably completing some of these steps, but
Yeah.
maybe we can go through them and then
Yeah. No, I
some
thank
final
you.
thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think, it's more than just the initiative, obviously, all the work that the faculty are doing, but I think, launching this graduate certificate, the MOOC specialization that Michael talked about. We're going to continue our speaker series in the fall. We had one canceled for the CTO of Disney Studios about what they're doing, and so we'll continue that, plus add a few more. We postponed our XR summit that was supposed to happen next week. We'll postpone that. We'll let everyone know. I think in this first year, right, getting all of these things launched, beginning to create early prototypes of these 6 projects, beginning to work out our pipeline of talent development and our project management and workflow processes. I think in 3 years, if we've created, 20 experiences for different faculty, if we found out a way to equip faculty to create their own experiences on top of certain platforms, perhaps. So I know you've been very interested in this, Michael, around like the PowerPoint for XR, so faculty can kind of bring their own content into something to create. And we've been exploring things like Mozilla Hubs, some of the projects that you've been working on, but and that's one of the ideas we're thinking of within the physics lab project. Is it's not just a physics lab; it's more of a lab functionality that faculty can bring their own content and experiments into to create those. I would say in year 5, it's that we've scaled this out in some degree to all 19 schools and colleges, and either them participating, them creating content for themselves. I think there's a lot of opportunity in 360 video for faculty in the law school, in public policy, and social work to create these interactions and experiences to help train these skills that are hard to do. I think there's a lot that can be done in that space, and we can create a process and a framework for folks to go generate some of that themselves, and then with less of the manual like modeling and design and lots of interaction. I think
Yeah.
there's ways in that space we can really scale this out.
Yeah, the only thing I would say on the tools side, a lot of us are exploring lowering the barrier of entry,
Yep.
and you see so many different versions of it, and it's all great. But the really more important next step would really guiding design. Like, it's fine that we want to enable everybody, and I've been working on some of these tools, but if I now give them to all these faculty across Michigan,
Sure.
what are they actually going to do if nobody guides them through the
Right.
design? So right now, I think the solution is people, right? You have a team now, you have
Yep.
friends, you have relationships. I think year 1 was all about and is continuing to be about relationships, like setting these up, strategic, personal. We did a trip to Disney together, right? That was
Yep.
good. California, spending some time together, getting to know the XR do's and don'ts.
Right.
So I feel from there, the tools need to happen, but we really need better guidelines with these
Yep.
tools.
Yep.
I don't know. We have one last comment from Alan Smithson, who you know very well.
Sure.
And he was just saying that, hey guys, could you mention that we are going to release a global guide to XR collaboration this week? So I think, Alan, would be great if you could just post it on Slack and we could all look at it together. And so it's great that you and other people are working on these things, and
Yep.
especially in the education domain. And it's like people like Alan that we really, or Kent and Microsoft and Sophie, Stelmar, and all the people that we met.
Yep.
I think that's going to help us a lot as well. I'm looking forward to Dan Miller's talk. I saw him at SIGGRAPH, an evangelist in Unity. I'm known to sometimes criticize Unity, especially in my class, mostly because of the high learning curve. But I'm not. It's a brilliant tool. It just needs the mind and the training.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with all the next steps. I think these summits, this XR Midwest, should be a regular event. It's great that it's the second time. That's the way to define success. Grow and do things regularly. So hand it back to you, and then I guess Matthew.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I thank everyone for the time. Here's our contact information. We have an XR newsletter. If you go to ai.umich.edu/XR, you can learn more about the initiative, sign up for the newsletter, and we look forward to hearing the next speakers and connecting with you all.